Blood Moon Chronicles. Chapter 6. Blood Moon Rising, by the narrator of our little apocalypse. Rhonda, reluctant survivor and professional tripper over things. They say the blood moon doesn't just rise, it hungers. Outside our barricaded farmhouse, the air thickened like congealed blood. Mike paced, clutching his silver pistol like a security blanket, while Sarah sharpened steaks with the focus of a surgeon and the sanity of a squirrel on espresso. I sat on a moth-eaten couch, nursing a bottle of whiskey that tasted like stagnant water and gasoline. This was our genius plan? Hide here until dawn? Brilliant. We might as well have left a kick-me sign on our backs, but let's rewind to how we got here. 2 days ago, the town's cryptid zoo escaped. Werewolves with jaws like bear traps, vampires who thought subtle meant stop blinking, and things best described as skinless puppets wearing shadows. Mike, bless his stubborn heart, refused to flee. "We fight," he declared, channeling every action movie hero who ever died in the third act. Sarah nodded grimly, already muttering about holy water ratios like a mad chemist. Me? I just wanted coffee that wasn't made from pond scum. Bubba the Molotov king. Bubba shuffled into the room, his boots crunching glass from the porch he'd booby-trapped earlier. Imagine a grizzly bear dipped in molasses and dressed in a Duck Dynasty pajama set. He carried a jug of homemade napalm, grinning like a possum eating roadkill. "Y'all smell like fear and cheap whiskey," he drawled, slapping my shoulder hard enough to rattle my teeth. "This here moon's fixin' to turn the sky into a slaughterhouse. Got me 3 flavors of hellfire, cinnamon apple pie and extra virgin desperation." I eyed his cinnamon brew. It bubbled ominously, reeking of turpentine and poor life choices. Then there was Lily. 10 years old, eyes like cracked dollhouse windows, clutching a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. She'd been mute since her parents turned into vampire confetti, but she communicated, in whispers that made the walls sweat. "They're coming," she breathed, pointing at the window. Outside, a werewolf sniffed our scent, a sound like wet gravel in a blender. "Bubba's fire will burn their eyes, but the moon drinks deeper," she giggled, high and unhinged. Note to self: never trust a kid who talks to dolls. The tension built like a drum roll before the apocalypse. John Carpenter would have loved it. Minimal lights, maximum dread. The farm creaked. Floorboards groaned in time with my heartbeat. Shadows pooled like oil, and every rustle in the woods was either a deer or a demogorgon. We checked our arsenal. Mike's pistol, 3 bullets left. Sarah's stakes carved from cursed oak. Bubba's Molotovs when diplomacy fails, he'd said, winking. Lily's rabbit probably useless, but it had personality. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. A single rap. Tap, tap, tap. Like fingernails on a coffin. We froze. Bubba hefted his jug. Sarah gripped a stake like a holy lightsaber. Mike inched toward the door, pistol trembling. "Who's there?" he barked, voice cracking. A guttural moan answered, half human, half static. The door splintered open. A figure staggered in. A man in a blood-soaked flannel, eyes milky with something wrong, his skin peeled back like old paint, revealing muscle that twitched in unnatural directions. "Help me," he gurgled, collapsing. Too late. With a snap like overcooked spaghetti, his spine elongated. Fur erupted from his pores, claws rippling through flesh. A werewolf? No, worse. Its maw split open, rows of teeth glinting like shattered glass. Chaos erupted. Bubba hurled a Molotov. It missed, splashing the wall in gouts of orange fire that melted into black sludge. The creature lunged at Mike, jaws dripping neon venom. Sarah plunged her stake into its shoulder, thwomp, but it just shuddered, flesh knitting itself like stop-motion clay. Lily screamed, a sound like shattering crystal. "Silver! The eyes!" I fumbled for Mike's dropped pistol, tripped over Bubba's jug of course, and spilled Molotov fluid everywhere. It ignited, a wall of flame licking the ceiling. The werewolf howled, fur burning to charcoal, muscles sloughing off in greasy ribbons. We stomped out its skull with Bubba's boot, a sound like wet concrete crumbling. The room reeked of burnt hair and existential dread. As we panted, the moon crested the horizon, a bleeding orb that turned the sky viscous crimson. Lily stared at it, whispering, "It's not the blood you see, it's the blood you become." Suddenly, the ground trembled. A low, resonant thud echoed from the woods, not footsteps, but something heavier, something ancient. We peered through a crack in the boards and saw silhouettes shifting. Not wolves or vampires, but amorphous shadows with too many limbs. Shapeshifters? Worse? Bubba lit a cigar, grinning. Well, butter my butt. Looks like we're not the main course after all. Mike wiped gore from his face, looking like he'd lost his last marble. Sarah silently handed me a steak. The air hummed with the promise of more violence, more body horror, more of us failing spectacularly, as Rod Serling might quip. In a world where monsters wear human skin and the moon hungers, the only thing we hunt is ourselves, fumbling, afraid, and perpetually one misstep from becoming the next exhibit in nature's freak show. Next time? Maybe we'll remember to watch where we're tripping, or maybe we'll just trip harder. Chapter 7. Unforeseen Threats. I'd like to say that I was prepared for this. Not quite. The sort of prepared you get when you've spent the last 20 minutes chewing on a half-roasted rabbit in a kitchen that smells like old wood and stale coffee. But that's fine. This is how heroes begin. With a vague sense of direction, an unsteady hand, and a mouthful of whiskey that tastes like gasoline. The day before had been a blur of sweat and shouted plans. Mike and Rhonda were already arguing about whether the vampire was really a vampire or just a very drunk werewolf masquerading as one. Sarah had sharpened stakes with a surgical precision that would make any surgeon jealous. And I, though I'm still learning how to keep my voice from sounding like a broken radio, had somehow found a couch that wasn't the one that ate my feet last night. We gathered around the fire pit we'd built in the backyard of our farmhouse because nothing says heroic quite like a glowing, smoldering circle of wood. The crack in the boards was a perfect spot for us to peer through and watch the shadows shift. I told Mike, if you want to be sure that the wolves are actually werewolves, and not just vampires trying on their best wolfskin, but he just laughed so hard I had to sit down again. Well, butter my butt. Looks like we're not the main course after all, said Bubba, lighting a cigar and grinning. He was the sort of guy who could turn a simple cigarette into a spectacle that would make an amateur magician look like a child's art project. Mike wiped gore from his face, looking like he'd lost his last marble. We had been in the middle of a fight against something that felt more ancient than we were. The ground trembled again. A low, resonant thud echoed from the woods. Not footsteps, but something heavier, as though an old earth spirit had just decided to take a bite out of us and then chew it slowly. We peered through a crack in the boards and saw silhouettes shifting. Not wolves or vampires, but amorphous shadows with too many limbs. Shapeshifters? Worse? The shape was like a jellyfish that had gone on strike. It pulsed in time to our heartbeat, the kind of pulse you feel when your stomach is full of adrenaline and stale coffee. The air hummed with the promise of more violence, more body horror, more of us failing spectacularly. In a world where monsters wear human skin and the moon hungers, the only thing we hunt is ourselves, fumbling, afraid, and perpetually one misstep from becoming the next exhibit in nature's freak show. Next time, maybe we'll remember to watch where we're tripping, or maybe we'll just trip harder. The new threat that emerged was not a single creature but a group of them, a horde of shapeshifters that could take any form. Their arrival was as unexpected as the sudden thunderstorm that followed the last line from the first chapter. The cryptids joined forces with the werewolves and vampires, making the battle even more desperate. We had been preparing for this before the night began. The unforeseen in our plans had always meant something like we did not see it coming. But now we were seeing an entire army of shapeshifters, each one moving like a living shadow that could stretch and compress at will. They weren't just wolves or vampires, they were the kind of monsters you only hear about in horror movies and folklore. The thing was, they moved together, like a single organism made up of many limbs. We knew we had to act fast. Mike was already making a plan on how to split our forces, while Rhonda had taken the lead on what I consider the most important weapon in any fight, the proper choice of when to use your weapons and when to keep them ready for a surprise attack. The night was far from over, and we were ready to take it. I took my position at the front line. I was still learning how to keep my voice from sounding like a broken radio, but I did manage to find a couch that wasn't the one that ate my feet last night. The ground trembled again as we waited for the first attack. A low, resonant thud echoed from the woods. Not footsteps, but something heavier, as though an old earth spirit had just decided to take a bite out of us and then chew it slowly. The shapeshifters moved in a strange way that made me feel like I was watching a dance, a slow waltz with a twist. They were a combination of the best parts of vampires and wolves, and they did not even know what being a monster really meant. "Look!" Mike shouted, pointing at one of the shapeshifters. The creature's body twisted and split in a way that made it look like an octopus with too many limbs. It looked like a creature from a horror movie, but the texture of its skin was more akin to a spider that had taken a bath in hot chocolate. The battle began as soon as we were ready. Mike used his silver pistol, a security blanket I clutched tightly, and Sarah sharpened stakes with the focus of a surgeon and the sanity of a squirrel on espresso. We moved into the night like a flock of crows, each of us moving in perfect synchrony. The fight was intense, and we had to use every ounce of our strength, skill, and humor. It took us a while to understand how the shapeshifters work. They used their own body parts like weapons, each one a different part of the creature's anatomy, each one capable of taking an attack in a different direction at the same time. It was then that we realized we had a new ally, an old friend of our group. He was called Tom, or Tommy, and he had a voice that sounded like a chorus of dead birds. Tommy had been fighting on his own for months before we all gathered in one place. He had always said he liked to keep his voice loud so no one would overlook him. He had also taught us how to make a special kind of blood, like a soup of dark liquid with the texture of a storm cloud that could help us keep the monsters at bay. "I will stand at the back of the fight," he told me, "and I'll keep an eye on the enemy's rear." The night was far from over. We were ready to take it. The battle began as soon as we were ready. Mike used his silver pistol, a security blanket, and Sarah sharpened stakes with a surgical focus. We moved into the night like a flock of crows, each of us moving in perfect synchrony. I had the feeling that the future would be bright. I didn't know what the next chapter would look like yet, but this was a good start. The fight has been long and difficult. There are still many unknowns. We need to keep our eyes on the enemy's back. The night will end with a new story. I've heard rumors that there may be another group of monsters that can take any form in the near future. It is my hope that they'll bring me more food, and the ability to eat an entire dinner at once. I am not sure what this means, but we are ready. In the world where monsters wear human skin and the moon hungers, the only thing we hunt is ourselves, fumbling, afraid, and perpetually one misstep from becoming the next exhibit in nature's freak show. Next time, maybe we'll remember to watch where we're tripping, or maybe we'll just trip harder. Well, that's it for today, folks. Please stay tuned for the next installment of Blood Moon Chronicles, 7 p.m. Central Time. It's been a real pleasure. Oh, by the way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you soon, my friends.